3 years. So what I did was I focused on gifted students who have an issue in math with like ERQs and short answers and trying to get over that anxiety. Yes?
Will there be a test?
No.
I'm gifted, I need to know that.
This is true. So they have extreme anxiety. They struggle to explain. They can usually be very quick to tell you what the answer is, but not how they got it. And so that's where they really struggle a lot. So that's what I kind of jumped into as far as studying and trying to figure out. So what I did was I focused on trying to improve their ERQ short answer scores. Overall, so I took a bunch of practice problems. We worked on all those sorts of things. And then I also did a couple different mini lessons as far as working on strategies and tools to provide the students so that they could do better and feel more successful. So my research question was, what is the effect of writing on the anxiety level of a gifted math student while in middle school? Just because gifted students are something that is very prevalent in our school. When I started, I was obviously on a gifted team, so that was obviously a little bit easier of a focus. And my kids are gifted. They're gifted in many different ways. And so I was working with 90 gifted students as opposed to 30. So when I finally completed the study was done on my 30 Navigators advanced students. So that provided just a little bit different of a background as far as like their gifted and talented scores, because they were only in the low 20s as opposed to the upper 20s like I was working with beforehand. So the different data that I used, okay, so you guys know all of this. I teach at Jefferson County Public Schools. The school that I actually did my master's with is Campbellsville University, so they like to know all the demographics and stuff because it's obviously very different than a lot of the people working in Campbellsville that are working with, zero poverty level and, nothing like that. So our dynamics are pretty important as far as explaining it to the rest of the school. So I did a whole really wonderful, exciting literature review about anxiety levels and about middle school students and what's going on in their brains and what's happening. So it's proven already that math anxiety is negatively correlated to their ability to score well. Even though they're really intelligent, they do poorly on their tests because they freak out about it. So students experience what they call a fear of failure and a mental disorganization. They get too overwhelmed with the test and they just kind of panic and freak out and forget about the things that they do actually know. So using an explanation, it helps to create different schemas that they can connect to things that they already know and pull all of that together to be able to answer the short answer ERQ questions. So what we did is we applied different writing tools that we worked in language arts with. So I worked with Ms. Jeffers a lot as far as what are they doing in their classroom to be able to apply it to the short answer ERQ questions. Your board has hated me since day one, Ms. Riley. So for my data, I did pre and post math tests. I did a short answer question that I was able to grade at the beginning and at the end. And then I also did a pre and post test on anxiety. So their thoughts and feelings as far as when it comes to explaining themselves as math. And then throughout the study, I did interview questions on just their thoughts and processes as far as completing these things and doing all these lessons. So I had 32 students and we did the study over 5 weeks. I did mini lessons on utilizing the rubric and the different vocabulary used on the rubric, applying those mathematical vocabulary words to be able to improve their scores. Pre-writing just to kind of organize all their thoughts and getting all of their thoughts on the paper even before they start solving the math. Annotating the problem was another big one that a lot of the kids liked, as well as like rereading the problem. So the first time it's just kind of what's it asking, then the second time kind of jumping in and figuring out what the details are and what it's looking for, how to answer the questions, and so on.
Ready?
Yep. So what I did as far as like to maintain anonymity, because my kids are really concerned that their friends are going to think they're stupid. So what I did is I assigned all the students a number, and so anything they turned in, they would have their number on it that I was able to connect with their name so nobody else was able to see their scores or anything, but they were still able to keep up to date as far as what their pre-test scores were, what their post-test scores were, and all of that. And then I had them, whenever I did my interview questions, instead of pulling them one-on-one and talking to them and recording it and then dictating what they said and did all that,
I had them go up on the board and write their answer, which was an easier way for me to just visually see what's going on. So that they kind of were able to both predict what they were going to write as well as to like brainstorm all of that, and that just helped to not have them worry as much about what their peers were thinking and more focus on answering the actual question to the best of their ability. The biggest problem that I had were just transient students, and that's just because of a lot of our population I know. I had 3 different kids, 2 that left and 1 that came in the middle of the study, so that obviously kind of skewed a little bit of the numbers, but not so much so to affect the study. So as far as their math results, the dark blue that you can kind of see on here are their pre-test scores, so I just did a short answer. We had 21 zeros, 3 ones, and 8 twos, so obviously it was pretty low at the very beginning. And then when they retook the test for their post-test, the numbers of 1s and 2s went up and the zeros went down, which was really good. We talked a lot about get something on the paper because the worst that can happen is it has nothing to do with it. But as long as you connect it to what's going on, you're obviously going to get some sort of good score. So, hang on just a second.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, right. So then their class average actually went up a lot because of those scores. It went up by 0.6875, yay, out of 2. So that was kind of nice to see. As far as their anxiety, I asked them 5 questions and they just answered on a scale of 1 to 5. I kind of laughed because their ability to like math went down, but I think that's just a lot of 7th graders just putting a score and not really being honest about whether that changed or didn't change. And then obviously it was not very good that it makes them nervous to show their work. Their nerves increased as the study went on, so that didn't really help as well. But the other 3 were the results that I was looking for, which was good. I struggled to explain myself. That score went down, which means it made it easier. Math makes me panic went down a little bit, so that was good as well. And then their overall anxiety went down by almost a whole point as a class, which is pretty nice to see because obviously that's what I was hoping for. And then as far as like the interviews go, I just took a couple different quotes that the students put on the board that I just copied down. So they said, because I know what I did it. I mean, it was kind of funny because they were writing like they talk. They didn't really think about what it was and I just did exactly what they wrote. But they talked about not being able to put it into words, having trouble with timing, on map, how it's pulling lots of different things that they haven't necessarily seen before. I thought that was interesting. And then just anxiety because they want to please everybody. And that's a lot of our gifted students, is they just want to make you happy. They don't care if they actually understand it, they just want to please you with if that has to do with the score, if it doesn't, and whatnot. The second question was how can writing strategies help you in the math classroom? I of course got responses that they said, you know, it doesn't help me, I don't care. Literally, that they wrote that on the board. And I'm like, okay, great, thank you for that. That's really helpful.
That's when you tell them they're not pleasing you.
Yeah, exactly. Get it together. But those are the ones that they don't care. They talked about annotating. They talked about using the vocabulary. They even gave examples of quotient and sum and being able to use those in short answers to increase their ability to get higher scores. Then they also talked about the more strategies you have, the more you remember the math. And so that was really nice to see that they actually were getting something out of it. Then the final interview question was how are the strategies that you've learned going to help you? So they talked about the explanation process, just knowing where to start is really big. Annotating, a lot of the kids really liked annotating. We got out highlighters, we marked different important words, different important question words, vocabulary words, and that just helped them to dissect the question, because I think a lot of our kids just get hung up on the question and what is it asking, and actually answering what the question is asking. And then organizing, that was big as well. So as far as the discussion, overall it did have a positive impact. It did decrease anxiety, and students enjoyed having the different strategies and options. Different actions hopefully will help with their K-Prep scores and increasing those and overall. So I have talked to the students about the results, and we're just going to keep doing that as far as practice problems. CPM is great as far as having those longer questions that have multiple parts for their homework and for their warm-ups, which is really nice. Obviously, as far as sharing the results, here you go, you're welcome. So I am going to talk to parents as well and send something out so that they kind of know what happened, because they all had to sign a permission slip saying that they knew what was going on, so they may as well get something out of it. And then obviously
really liked the math department. And there's all of my wonderful resources. Thank you so much for putting up with me.
Yeah.